So essentially, what I think is happening is that whilst newbies and people who have fiat can't buy cryptocurrency, you're encouraging like a decentralized, kind of a little bit more decentralized peer-to-peer kind of, I guess, slightly towards the more ideal Bitcoin situation where you don't need to have the fiat on and off ramp to a degree, and you're just if you're earning in Bitcoin and you've already got it, and people are accepting Bitcoin on the street or whatever, then it's actually almost better for you, quite frankly, in a way. I don't know, Ragnar, have you got any thoughts on this? Did you read much about like the Nigeria kind of bank ban before at all, or have you heard much about it?
I didn't read that specifically into it, but there's been a few other countries who have kind of done this where the central bank muddies the water and some other things. But it's funny because we were just talking about the debit and credit cards, and those are banks that process, Bitcoin type transactions. And so these cards that we just talked about, those probably wouldn't be possible in Nigeria if I'm understanding what they're doing correctly. So we just said, hey, there's a problem with these cards. And then second news story is, well, here you go. The bank shuts off the spigot and those cards are no good. So it's funny how that works. And I like the way you guys said that this is driving more sort of underground, more peer-to-peer type transactions, which is great. That also shows, though, that's only a smaller subset of people who actually go through that extra work. I think kind of your mainstream majority of people in Bitcoin, they would just kind of throw up their hands and say, well, this is too much work. This is too complicated. This is too risky. So the state can greatly affect Bitcoin, but on the side of anything regarding a third party at all. And that's where the state can actually really, really come down. And people say, that's just third parties. But let's be honest, most people rely on third parties for buying, selling, holding, transacting, everything else. So interesting two stories.
Yeah, I guess there's always two sides to each coin. There's always a pro and a con. There's always something right with these sides of it. And we'll see what India does as well, because that's very muddy at the moment. Like they've been back and forthing with different politicians with different views.
Yeah, the big threat isn't one country. I mean, obviously India is just what is it, like the third or fourth most populous country in the world, but it's when FACTA comes into play, when it's that worldwide organization of all countries dominated by the US, for better or worse. So when you start getting them involved, and like I think there's 100 or 90 countries that all agree to FACTA. That's when it's going to be real, not these countries here and there, because you can get around them. So if you start seeing the US and other countries start trying to implement that on a global scale, that's when it's really going to matter. And I think that's a real threat. So.
Yeah, no, I can see what you mean there. Like, yeah, I mean, a lot of the movements that we've had from like the European Central Bank and different institutions, kind of, and a lot of this stuff about the lack of environmental friendly side of things coming from Bitcoin appearing from Bill Gates and this kind of stuff. And like my mum, for example, does not understand Bitcoin really at all, quite frankly. And even she heard about the environmental thing, went, huh? It's a bunch of rubbish. What do you mean? What? She was like, you have to use resources to build anything, current money you have to use. And she just shot it down even harder than I did. And she was like, well, so, I think that there is this agenda potentially being built against Bitcoin and other cryptos in favor of these wonderful CBDCs that will be entirely controlled by your country's government. And that, say you speed on the road and they can go, oh yeah, we're going to fine you. Don't worry, we'll just take out your balance. We'll just do that for you. You don't have to worry about it. I can see that happening, and that worries me quite a lot. But I guess to totally flip out of this serious discussion, before we have the highlight, which is our interview with you, Ragnar, we'll do a little bit of a break and have a fun game that everyone can join in with at home. We usually, a lot of the time, do crypto-based games, but I'm running out of like crypto facts and stuff to discuss. So what we'll do is, essentially we'll have a game where I've got 5 facts, entirely random facts, and you guys have to guess whether they're true or false. Essentially, you can take turns, give it a shot, and whoever wins at the end, you get 0 prize, except you've got your ego intact. So that's why we'll do this. Okay. The first fact I have for you guys, you've got to tell me if it's true or false, is cotton candy was invented by a dentist. So, Ricardo, I'll start off with yourself. What do you think? True or false, sir?
That sounds true.
Nice.
Job security.
Confident. Ragnar, what do you think on that one?
I remember reading about the history of cotton candy, but I can't remember if that one's true. So I'll say that that's false, just to be a contrarian to Ricardo.
Nice, keeping it interesting on the pod. I like it. Jerry, what are you going for? True or false?
False.
Okay. Oh, so we've got two false. And so it's true, turns out, guys. Dentist William Morrison and confectioner John Wharton invented machine-spun cotton candy in 1897. And it was introduced in 1904 as fairy floss. And then another dentist reinvented the machine and came up with the name cotton candy. So, yeah, that is like the most like sugar just laden. Just to keep eating it, guys. It's good for your teeth. And, you know, they don't have to come and see you. That's incredible. I love that kind of stuff. It's like, it makes me laugh. So yeah, that's the first one. So Ricardo, you're up 1 point already. Let's move on to number 2. Approximately 2,300 grapes are in every bottle of wine. Okay, true or false? Ricardo, go for it.
I would say that's true.
He's going for true. Ragnar, what are you going for, mate?
Oh, I don't know anything about wine. So Ricardo was right on the last one. I'm going to say true. I'm trying to count. What would 2,000 grapes look like compressed? Close enough. So I'll say true.
Gotcha. Jerry, what are you going for, mate?
I'm going to be the contrarian here, so false.
My man. Okay, and Jerry is right. It's false. It's actually, so you guys now know there's approximately here, 1,204 grapes in every bottle of wine. So not bad. So we've got 1 and 1. Okay, there's still 3 left. So anyone can win. All right, exciting times. Number 3, the official bird of the city of Anaheim, California, is the Goodyear blimp. Ricardo, true or false?
False.
Very. I like the ice cold, you know, he's on it. He's got it. Ragnar, what are you going for? True or false for that one?
I should know this because I'm from Orange County and Anaheim is about 30 minutes from where I grew up. And there is the blimp there, but I'm going to try to go 0 for 3 and say that it's true.
Gotcha. So we're going for true. And Jerry, what are you going for? This is why I love this game because it's so stupid.
I have no idea. So once again, I'm going to be the contrarian. Go with false.
Okay, so we've got 2 false, 1 true. I'm afraid, Ragnar, you're down again. It is
3.
It is false. So you weren't far off actually. So not Anaheim, California, but Redondo Beach, California. They passed a resolution in 1983 to make the Goodyear blimp their official bird. So there you go. 2 more. Okay, so it's basically between Jerry and Ricardo here because I think you guys are even, right? Sounds about right. I think you're 2 for 2. Actually, no. I think Ricardo, you've got them all right, haven't you? So I think you're up. Well, whatever. I don't know. Who cares? We'll find out after the podcast. Someone can tell us. Someone listening can tell us. So number 4, the process of 3D printing began in the 1980s and not in the 2000s or even the 1990s. True or false, Ricardo?
I would say that's true.
Ragnar, what are you going for?
True, I guess.
And Jerry.
I was hoping Ragnar would know.
I actually put that in there for your sake, Ragnar.
because Ragnar does know a lot about guns. So I was thinking probably he knows something along the lines of 3D gun printing, So I don't know really. True.
Yeah, so you're all correct. Chuck Hull invented a process called stereolithography, which used UV layers to solidify photopolymer that created 3D parts layer by layer. And that was in 1984. It was then picked up by another guy who started the first ever 3D printing company in 1990. So there you go. I was pretty amazed by that. You only hear about it in like 2010 or something, and there you go. The last one now, okay. The Queen owns all of the swans in England. True or false?
That's true.
Ragnar, what are you going for?
That sounds like an anti-American question. So I think this is discrimination against me. But since I'm the guest, I'll comply and I'll say it's true.
Okay, and Jerry, what are you going for?
It sounds like something that could be true, so I'm gonna go with true.
Yeah, you're all true. All the swans in England are owned by the Queen.
Why?
It's because it used to be a delicacy, right? So they used to love eating the swans and the royal family. And now, if you kill one or whatever, it's a serious issue. So I remember one guy killed one and ate it or something in a park. It was really weird, and he got arrested for it. So it was a thing. It's criminal. So there you go. All right. Well, I'm going to say the winner was probably Ricardo. I'm just guessing. So well done, Ricardo. Hey, congratulations, and thanks for joining in, Ragnar. It's a good time to do a game to just break up the serious chat. So what we'll do is we'll now crash back into the bit that everyone's actually here for, which is our interview with you. So. Yeah, I guess, Ricardo, do you want to kick off our interview and get going with some of the questions that you have for today?
Sure. Ragnar, I wanted to ask you for my first question is how did you come up with the idea for Guns and Bitcoin, and how did you actually get started with it?
Gosh, with Guns and Bitcoin, I think I started thinking about it in about 2016 or 2017. It's just something that popped in my head. I don't know, walking around, maybe I just thought, wow, there's a real overlap between the two. And I just thought, gosh, I want to do something with this idea one day. And then just, I think it was about 2018, I decided, hey, let's just put something down, got the website, the Twitter domain, and just started just sharing images of things that I thought of. I designed our case, Scorpion case. I think that's really got me started because I was storing my Bitcoin hardware wallets in a safe. And then of course I have guns in a safe and I have guns in other areas. And so I thought, gosh, my Bitcoin is worth more than my guns. And so wouldn't it be nice to be able to put them, with my handguns, and I take them places, and it's a good way to secure them. And if someone's robbing you, they say, go get your hardware wallets. I'll say, oh, okay, I'll go get those and I'll get you something else too on my way. So I think our gun case is what really solidified it and turned it into like a real idea. And then it's just evolved into what it is today. So to answer your question, the idea just kind of came about just living my life, I guess.
You use the word overlap, which is perfect for my next question, because my next question is, why do you think there's such an overlap between people that are into sound money like Bitcoin and gold and firearms ownership?
I think it's a couple of things. So I think both guns and Bitcoin are an asymmetric defense against a more powerful adversary, especially on a defensive end. So obviously, if you're an individual trying to go up against 2 or 3 robbers or the state, a gun gives you that asymmetric defense that you otherwise wouldn't have had. And Bitcoin's the same thing, right? You're trying to go up against the legacy payment system, banking system, and there's no way you have power over them except through, Bitcoin and that technology. So both gives kind of the individual and kind of the minorities and the smaller guys an advantage that they have. I think the other thing is autonomy. I think that people are self-reliant. A lot of people in Bitcoin are self-reliant type people. And so I can't imagine not being able to defend myself and having to rely on calling the police. And I also have been in positions where I couldn't rely on the banking system. Like I got kicked off of PayPal like in 2013 or 2014. And that's how I was running my business. And I was left, it was very tough. It was the only way I was accepting, payments. And so it's just, I can't imagine being so vulnerable to be able to rely on all these third parties, be it police or via, banks. So it's probably autonomy, self-reliance, self-defense. And the last one I would say is both are really fun. I love scanning QR codes and not having to enter my phone number and my name and my mailing address and my phone number. I just think it's fun, and shooting guns is a lot of fun. So, and the type of people who are in both, I love a lot of the people in guns, and I love a few people in Bitcoin. So.
All right. I wanted to ask you, what are the most important projects being built on Bitcoin right now, in your opinion?
I think just using it to build an economy that's parallel to the one we have. I mean, just using it is the most important project, because it's like Satoshi said, like the banking system works well for most transactions, and it does, but it works horribly for a small subset of transactions. And those are ones where you could be censored, deplatformed, where you want privacy. And so as I see where the world is going, you could be canceled for saying that there's more than 2 genders, and that's a scary world. And so the most important thing is what happens if you have no access to money. I mean, money is a weapon. So the most important project is making Bitcoin money. And but if you're asking maybe for specific software or a team, I would probably say like CoinJoin and Samurai Wallet is doing an excellent job. They're one of our premier sponsors at our Bear Arms and Bitcoin conference. So Bitcoin privacy, any effort there is, I think, would be my answer.
Okay,
I guess,
cool.
Something that's interesting to me was that you mentioned like the cancel culture side of things. And like you're like a passionate guy, right? And you're talking about a topic a lot of the time that people understandably have strong opinions on, whether they're pro or con something. So like how have you kind of handled like cancel culture and attempts on it? And I guess how do you see that like that this kind of developing cancel culture over the last 5 years has like changed, I guess, Bitcoin in a way, or has like challenged it? Because I guess if people are like afraid to take a stand on something or to develop something that they believe in because they think they might get completely cancelled and left out in the dust, then that can kind of stall something altogether. And I guess that kind of applies to Bitcoin. So like, how do you deal with that as a person?
Well, yeah, and you know, I think we should probably, I like to define cancel culture not as cancel culture, but as Marxism and as Bolshevism. This is what they did in communist countries. Communist China, Eastern Europe, you know, Russia. You talk to people, older people in these countries, and ask them about the red revolutions and the communist revolutions. Guess what? These were the techniques that these countries used. You know, they canceled you. They deplatformed you. They ultimately put you in camps. And so, and it's not a culture. Cancel culture isn't a culture. It's specific groups of people who are trying to, in the big picture, overthrow Western civilization, in my view. So I see this quote unquote cancel culture as part of one tool of these Marxist Bolsheviks. And so to answer your question, how am I handling that? Well, I'm trying to get all of my Bitcoin and KYC free AML as much as I can. I'm trying to, you know, I do hold all of my keys. I don't have any Bitcoin on any exchanges. Sometimes I have to use exchanges for various things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I have a business that earns Bitcoin. So it becomes a lot harder to be deplatformed when, if they cancel my PayPal again, well, I still have my Bitcoin income. And then the third thing is just trying to make people aware that the way that we can counteract this Marxism is to use Bitcoin as money, because the day is going to come when you might be a victim. And so you see these stories that will come up, like so-and-so's deplatformed, and then someone will say, oh, Bitcoin fixes this. Or someone will try to raise money off one of these platforms to get kicked off. And they say, Bitcoin fixes this. Well, it doesn't usually, because so few people use Bitcoin for a method of payment that Bitcoin doesn't fix that. So the third thing is just trying to get people to, hey, why don't you try to spend a little bit of your Bitcoin, you know, $5, $100 at a time, just try to contribute to that, because you never know who it's going to be. It could be you next.
That's a good point. I guess like something you touched on a little bit there as well, with the like encouraging, is obviously the way to counteract it, I suppose. And as you say, is kind of like to strengthen yourself, like make sure you're, you know, able to, you know, defend yourself, able to like hold on to your own money yourself, which is quite interesting. And I guess you said about spending it as well and creating more of like a, you know, a world sort of currency acceptance kind of situation. Like, how do you? Because I guess there's always this question for a lot of people who are getting into Bitcoin, for example, and it's like, do I spend or do I hodl or do I do both? Or like how do you think a lot of people, like newbies, etc., should balance it? Because I know a lot of people just say hodl, don't sell ever kind of thing. But at the same time, you know, we want to encourage its use as a currency. So like, where do you think the balance kind of needs to be struck, I suppose, from your personal perspective? No,
that's a great question. And that's, I think a lot of people, when I talk about this, they misunderstand my position in it. They have this knee-jerk reaction, like, "Oh, you're Roger Ver. Oh, you know, you're a statist. You don't understand that value of money doesn't come from spending." That's what I'm saying. I'm saying like what you are, which is there's a balance. There's definitely a balance, and I don't know what it is, other than I think if people really care about the big picture of Bitcoin, which is being a separate society from the statist one we're in, is it's going to take some. So it's different for everyone. And I say, just try to find some companies that hold Bitcoin, you know, like, you know, Bitrefill, other ones, you know, keep, I think most, if not all of their Bitcoin in Bitcoin. But for hodling also actually really can help you be self-sovereign and be, make it very difficult for the Marxists to cancel you and deplatform you. Because if you have enough Bitcoin, then you're financially independent. And so they can't take away an income because you live off of your Bitcoin, and they can't deplatform your Bitcoin if you have enough. And I know there's a lot of people who have enough Bitcoin now to where they probably don't ever have to work again in their life. And I hope those people will step up in terms of being politically involved and speaking their mind, because a lot of people can't speak their mind. They have families, they have jobs where they can't get canceled. So hodling is actually a very good way to be self-sovereign and defend against yourself. And it's a balance, like you said, and it's different for everyone.
I wanted to ask you, do you have like a preferred Bitcoin wallet? And what is it? And then also, do you use Lightning Network, and do you have like a preferred Lightning wallet?
Yeah. So my mobile wallet, I like Samurai. I've been using them from when they started. I've always had an Android phone, several Android phones. So for my mobile wallets, that I like Electrum for desktop. I keep it pretty simple. I don't get too fancy with my setup. I just have my hardware wallets, and I store everything in a redundant, secure ways. I practice different protocols that I have. I'll move things now and then just to make sure they don't grow stale. In terms of like Lightning Network, so at GunsnBitcoin.com, we accept Lightning payments. We don't get a lot of them. It's mostly on chain. My experience with Lightning Network has been poor. It's just been frustrating for me. And like, for example, right now I have Bitcoin in these channels, Lightning Network channels, but with the price of Bitcoin now, the value of that Bitcoin is way too high. Like, I do not like how much Bitcoin I have in those channels, but I'm not sure the best way to securely get them out. And I know if I put some effort into it, I can. Yeah, people probably are listening to this saying, oh, what a joker. It's really easy. But it's just like, gosh, that's one more thing to deal with Lightning, whereas I don't have to do that with on-chain. So yes, I use Lightning, LND for BTC Pay Server. I just do it because customers want to pay with it. Otherwise, I wouldn't use Lightning.
I saw something on YouTube that a few years back, you were making the case that real estate is the best use case for Bitcoin and blockchain. I wanted to ask you, do you still think this? And if so, why or why not?
I no longer think that, because I was too optimistic with the real estate industry. I come from sort of a construction real estate development background. And when I first discovered Bitcoin in 2011, I kind of immediately thought of real estate. And actually, that was my first Bitcoin venture. I built this website where you can use it to buy real estate, really as escrow. The whole idea is escrow. And so we set up this website where you can buy and sell things. And instead of a multi-sig wallet, we partitioned the keys. It was called the Cascacious scheme. It was Mike Caldwell who created the Cascacious coin. I think we were the only people to do this, because real estate is so expensive and slow. And I just thought, wow, it'd be so great if everyone used Bitcoin and used a multi-sig or our escrow that we created. It cuts out the middleman. It makes it efficient. It makes it transparent. And you pay for real estate in Bitcoin, which you cut out the banks. You could use your proof of reserve. You could show that you have the money and the source of funds with Bitcoin. You could timestamp real estate documents on the Bitcoin blockchain. So Bitcoin really is the perfect solution for real estate transactions. Where I went wrong was overestimating the real estate industry and their willingness to change and to innovate. And I spent years trying to push it. And I also thought it was the best use case because real estate is the largest asset in the world. So I thought, if I can get more people to use Bitcoin for real estate, it would greatly increase the price of Bitcoin. It would bring a whole new class of people into Bitcoin. It would just build out this whole suite of tools. And it's great for international transactions. Like I had another project where I was working with some people in China to try to get them, have them use Bitcoin to buy real estate in the US, because you can only send out so much money from China to the US. And there's so much money buying real estate from China, and actually built the software for that. And so, yeah, I've changed my mind. I still get people asking me about it, wanting me to speak at conferences, wanting me to consult. And I just say no, because I don't think it's going anywhere.
In your opinion, what do you think the most likely path to mass adoption is going to be?
I don't think there's going to be mass adoption of Bitcoin, simply because it's just too much friction for a lot of things, and everything is so much easier. So I just don't think there's going to be mass adoption. If there is, I think it would be really bad for Bitcoin, because at that point, the state is going to oppose it. I think the state will shut it down long before it could really reach mass adoption. It's always how you define mass adoption, but in terms of, let's say it's defined as 50% of population owning Bitcoin, I just don't think that'll happen. Also because Bitcoin is so volatile that if we get out of our bubble, most of the world can't handle the volatility of Bitcoin when you're living paycheck to paycheck, which most of the world does, or maybe even worse.
Okay,
that's fair.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I thought you subscribed to like the hyper Bitcoinization.
I'm very, very skeptical, if not outright dismissive, of hyper Bitcoinization. The level of adoption that would require is astronomical, and I think the state would shut it down long before that. And even then, I think the thing with Bitcoin is it's effectively only functions as any other asset, like gold or an ETF or stocks. It's really no different than any of those in terms of how most people use it, which is just as a long-term investment and bought and held with third parties. So when people say, wow, if Bitcoin reaches 1 million, it's like, well, how is that any different than Tesla stock going up 10,000% or gold? Like, tell me how it's different when this particular asset gains in value and adoption. How would that be any different than any other asset that gains massive adoption and price? I don't see it.
Okay. No, that's a really interesting take. So do you see it like as pretty much just like another commodity kind of asset?
The way it's being used by the majority of people, I do see Bitcoin as just any other commodity or asset, because, well, I mean, let's just look at it. Most people buy Bitcoin on Coinbase or some other third-party exchange that's regulated. They pay their taxes on it, and they don't use it as a method of payment. So how is that different than a stock or gold ETF or bonds or anything else? Just because it's called Bitcoin. And so if a lot of people adopt it, then how's that any different? I mean, I'd have to say, give me an example of where a financial asset or commodity like change the political world. And there's not one as far as I can tell.
Okay, fair enough.
Now that could be different. Now, listen, if you had some sort of mass adoption of Bitcoin as a method of payment, especially using CoinJoin and having privacy tools, and everyone doing peer-to-peer trading and peer-to-peer transactions, that would be a different story. That would be like peer-to-peer hyper-Bitcoinization or something. That would never reach mass adoption, but it could reach a critical mass to where it can be extremely disruptive.
Okay, cool.
That would kind of be like my dream, I suppose, would be like peer-to-peer kind of hyper Bitcoinization. But like, it's something that I don't necessarily believe will happen anytime soon. But,
I also think the danger of this hyper Bitcoinization idea is that it lulls us into sleep, lulls us into lack of action, because we just think all we have to do is hodl, the price goes up, it changes the world. And there's some guys in a Telegram group, they call it get rich and then change the world or something like that. And that just, it makes us lazy, and it makes us not build the infrastructure. It makes us not use Bitcoin as a method of payment. And it's just sort of magical thinking. And I just think it's a fantasy that keeps us from doing what we need to do and put in the hard work. And it gives us a false sense of confidence. That's another thing, is the hubris of hyper Bitcoinization, because it says that this is inevitable. And if there's one thing we've learned in history, it's that the state will try to crush anything that threatens its power, and nothing is inevitable but death and taxes.
Okay.
I know I'm the minority in that one, but that's just what I think.
You mentioned like Bolshevik communism earlier, right? And I guess the way you put it with regards to people kind of just saying, "Oh, believe and it will kind of happen, and people will come along," and that's kind of a very Menshevik communism-like way. And the Bolsheviks beat the Mensheviks, right? So I guess what you could argue is the government would be playing that Bolshevik-style game of forcing something on people, whereas the Menshevik communism was like this kind of idea that, hey, people are going to realize this is an awesome idea, and let's just chill and let people. But that obviously didn't work, and so I guess, as you could say, like history repeats itself, and in the people who are just relaxing, saying, yeah, people will work it out, Bitcoin, it will come, that may not work.
I did have one last question for you, which was, do you have any opinion on Schnorr or Taproot, the soft fork that's being proposed right now?
I don't really follow it. That's above my IQ.
Okay, fair enough.
Nice.
All right.
I like the honesty. Well, yeah, I guess what we'll do is we'll wrap up now. We always leave our listeners with 60 seconds approximately of just really good news in general to kind of leave people on a happy note. So I'll read that out and then we'll crash out of the podcast. So here goes. Georgia lab experiments show that CBD reduces plaque and improves cognition in early onset Alzheimer's. An island overrun with rats has now completely recovered 11 years after its ecosystem was entirely devastated. MIT scientists have developed the perfect breathable earth-friendly fabric using the same materials as single-use plastic bags. A town, Dauphine, Pennsylvania, has donated their UPS driver $1,000 to thank him for his essential work during the pandemic. Northwestern scientists have repaired and reversed ALS neuron damage in their lab using a non-toxic compound. The world's first 3D printed school is set to be created in Madagascar for half the price of a traditionally built school. Wall Street bets traders have donated $300,000 to adopt gorillas from the Dian Fossey Fund. And lastly, 52% of Americans surveyed recently say they volunteered for the first time ever in their lives during this recent COVID pandemic. That's it. That's your good news burst, everybody. So, Ragnar, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Genuinely really appreciated it, and I really enjoyed it. And you kind of, it was interesting to hear your points of view on quite a few different things. So, measurably thankful for that. And yeah, is there anything you want to kind of promote to anyone before we head out at all?
Well, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate your positivity. I'm kind of a skeptic, so I can fall into some adversarial negativity. So I appreciate your positivity. And just find me on Twitter, ragnarly.com, and then GunsnBitcoin.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I say, everyone out there listening, appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you again next week. Take care and remember to buy Bitcoin. All right.